And it's Monday. Today is Monday, and you know what Monday means? It means God of Highschool has laid upon us another episode, and I've only just finished watching it, and I'm still kind of in shock. Yikes! That's really gonna hurt in the morning. Okay, so before we get to the main meat of the episode, it's the end I really want to speak about. So we actually get a comic book pop art open today. So yeah, we get a comic book open with some very nice pop art, and it's called Big Bang. So the two nurses we see are called Heel and Sai. Also, if you can hear a dog barking in the background, I am so sorry. It's just the moment I start editing, I've got like a dog near me and it just barks at everything. So we open on Big Bang, the God of Highschool catch-up TV channel, and she says to the 7.3 billion fans, oh my god, that is so many of you guys, across 196 countries. I did have to quickly go and Google how many countries there are. According to Google, there's 195. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're I don't know, maybe Google's not including like North Korea. Who knows? So they say that the prelims are coming to a climax, that we're now down to our top four. We've got Mori Han, Mira, and a guy called Bayon Jae, and he is a jiu-jitsu artist. We don't know much about him, and you're not gonna for the next episode, so it's fine. But those are our four. I did have to go, who is he? Because I don't think we've seen him yet. We find out that the next battle is between Mira and Han, and that's going to take place in a week. I had to keep reminding myself that the entirety of this episode takes place within a week. So there's points in this episode where you're like, this is moving really quickly. And I had to keep going, like, how long has it been? So we're open on the scene with the trio walking home. And Mira states that, I'm sorry, I'm going to win. And Han, in his general Han-ness, is just like, be gentle with me. But we see that Mori is really frustrated that he can only fight whoever the winner is. And obviously, Mori's thing is he wants to fight all the strong people. And he can only really fight one of these guys. And then we see that a blue-haired guy, we're going to be calling him blue-haired guy. I do get a name for him a bit later on, but he is the blue-haired man, or Sir Fish. So actually, yeah, let's call him Sir Fish. And Sir Fish cuts the trio off as they're walking home with his car, and he says, my life purpose was to meet you, marry me. And that rolls into our intro. I did notice that the intro has changed a little bit, so it's still mainly the same, but there's a few add-in characters with the hoods who are in the credits now. And today's episode is called Marriage and Bonds. It's quite appropriate because most of this episode is about marriage, and the end scene, which I'm gonna hit in a moment, is basically about bonds. Okay, so we open on a scene where Mira's sister, who is okay, it must be a cousin actually. So Mira's cousin, we see them picking out dresses, and it seems that Mira has actually accepted the marriage with Mr. Fish. She's picking out all the colours, and her sister's, so what colour are you going to wear? And she's like, probably white. She asks, who are you inviting? And she's like, I'm still in school, I can't really afford to do too much. And she's all like getting excited looking ahead. So to be fair, her cousin is more excited about the wedding than Mira is. And we find out that Song Jin, which is Mr. Fish, aka Song Jin, we find out that he is the strongest martial artist in the country. He's also a businessman, and he represents the sports entertainment business. So he's a very big deal, and he says that he fell in love with Mira at first sight. I have put bull crap over here because, and this is where Mr. Fish came along, because this guy was fishy from the start. There's something about him just made me go, yeah, I don't like you. And this might come down to his design, where he's got purple eyes. And I made an episode about a different anime with a guy with purple eyes, and I said, you can't really trust the guys with the purple eyes generally, because purple is a colour of mystery. Generally, you don't know what's going on with them. They're generally hiding something as well. He proposed again after we saw him cut her off with the trio. And he met her in her dojo, and he had flowers with her, and he says that she's a diamond in the rough. He's studied the sword style, and that he finds it fantastic, that he vows that in 5 years, that every dojo, every sports place will be practicing this sword style, and that he wants to bring it to the forefront and make it shine. Again, I've put Mr. Fishy by it. And I've even said, why so fast? This is what I said at the beginning. This all happens within a week. It just feels like it's longer. We get a flashback to her dad's funeral, and everyone is mocking him for clinging to such an old sword style, and that, you know, the sword style is doomed because there's only like a little girl left. We see Mira crying, and her uncle meets her and says that she's going to be living with him now, and he says that he'll teach her. And we find out that as much as his heart is in it, he's a really bad swordsman. He's weak, he's pretty useless. We get a flash to her uncle asking Fishy, why are you marrying her? She's only a schoolgirl, which again really bothered me halfway through this episode. I'm guessing that means she's younger than I think she is. He kind of senses that something's not quite right, and we get quite a nice little low punch coming from Mr. Fish. He says that he is going to finish the dream that his brother had that he couldn't fulfill, which is quite painful. It's kind of a I'm going to do what you can't do kind of thing. And then this cuts to a burger bar, and Jin is ordering a bulgogi. I love bulgogi. Jin, you, my man, you're after my heart. He's trying to order a bulgogi burger, but he can't work out what it is he wants in the burger. And behind him, he hears all these people talking about the blue-haired guy and saying that, oh yeah, he's gonna marry a schoolgirl, and it's really, really wrong. And oh yeah, her name was like Yumira. And he turns around and he's like, you said Yumira? And this is where we presume that initially, after Mr. Fish had cut them off, she probably had said, actually, I'm going to decline in front of the three of them, because we saw him going again to the JoJo to re-propose to her. So I think it's safe to say that the other two didn't know she was accepting the marriage proposal. We see that Mori has tracked her down, and he asks her, are you really getting married? And she's all angry, like, how did you find me? How did you track me down? He said he asked HQ. And he also says, but is he really that important to you? What about the sword style kind of thing? He says you're throwing it away. And he also says that you were so excited for the tournament. You're doing so well. So why are you kind of pulling out? Because he heard from HQ that she had proposed to withdraw from the tournament. She gets angry. Mori gets angry because he can see that she's not marrying for love. She said, rightly so, that it's none of your business, and tells him to leave. And we get a little chibi Mori getting kicked down the staircase. We kind of see Mira's sister asking, who was that? And she's like, no one. Okay, we get a really cute moment again. Han is delivering noodles. And I have made a little quote here that maybe it's Panda Express. I know Panda Express is American, but there's a cute little panda on the back of his delivery truck. He gets a call from Jin, who's in a panic, and he says, and Han, this is probably my favorite line in the whole anime so far, is my noodles are getting soggy. And Jin says I'll eat them all. I love noodles, and as you know that I am Clockwork Dandy noodles. I am a very big fan of noodles. Han says that you shouldn't be butting into people's lives, which we see he's quite like that. We've seen that a few times when Han is stating that he won't get involved in things. So we get another example of Mori's amazing imagination, where he says maybe she's getting sold to another country, maybe she's going to be locked in his basement where there's lots of girls, and we get this cool little design. So again, we've already seen that Mori has a very lively imagination. Han goes, oh, you saw that in a movie, didn't you? And Jin's like, oh, my grandpa says that everyone you see on TV is into behind the scenes. Can't say the S word. I'm not monetized, but I don't want to exactly get demonetized. And Han's obviously like, that's rude, because you're obviously presuming that everybody on TV is up to something. And Jin just goes, she didn't look happy. Something about her isn't quite right. Even if you're right, me and you are just outsiders, and we have no right to butt into anybody's lives. We do get that, because Han is from what we've seen so far, he's a pretty secluded character, in the sense that he doesn't talk about himself a lot, and that is going to be an issue for what's coming up later, I think, because he's bottling it all up. Our mid-cut scene, which doesn't feel so mid, because it really just feels like it should have been later, because this episode feels like it went on forever, but at the same time, it really didn't. The mid-cut scene, we get some nice graffiti with the blue-haired fish. And then we also get some 8-bit trio on a bike, which I think we've seen before, the 8-bitness. I've put right at the top of the page, how fast? Mira is doing her makeup. It's time for the wedding. This is all happening in a week. I have to keep mentioning. This is all happening within a week. She looks absolutely amazing. Her uncle doesn't look so happy. And her sister's all super happy. She's like, makeup, check. Hair, check. Husband of your dreams, check. So she's more happy than Mira is, but we do get a little bit later on that she's not quite aware of the situation going on. Her uncle looks really sad. And we get this flashback to what I've been saying constantly throughout these episodes is Mira missed out on a childhood. Mira has missed out on so much because of her resolve. We see her doing her housework, and she's doing the washing. And her uncle even says, "You can go and have fun on your days off." And she's like, "Oh, I'll do it later." And then we get another flashback where they're in the streets together, they're walking along, and these girls are like, "Ooh, let's go shopping." And her uncle even goes, "Do you want to go and get some clothes?" And she's like, "No, it's not my thing, kind of. That's not my thing." This is what I've been saying quite a bit. Like, Mira has missed out on so much because she's so focused on carrying out her dad's wish. Okay, so back at the hall, Mr. Fish is approached by her uncle, and he's like, "I'm sorry, but can you possibly call off this wedding?" She thinks she's making this decision as an adult, but she's still a child. And Mira butts in, says it's okay. And I noticed that her bouquet is blue. It's so nice because obviously her husband husband to be, not really to be, but Mr. Fish has blue hair. Blue's nice. I think that's one of the, I like blue as a colour. It's a great colour. It's like, I'm happy my dreams are coming true. And she goes up to Mr. Fish. "I'm choosing you because your name and your power will help the sword style." So he himself is like, you can use me blatantly kind of thing, I don't mind. So he's aware that she's using him. But this is why I was like, this is fishy, because normally if somebody is using someone and they're happy to be used, it generally means they're up to no good themselves. But at this point, I couldn't work out what his gain was, whether he was just into young girls or something. It obviously it gets answered a little bit further down the line, but generally it's like, if people are using each other, generally both of them have got goals. I just couldn't figure out Mr. Fish's goal. So we then see that her sister is upset finally because she didn't understand anything, and it's kind of finally dawned on her that what's going on isn't quite as happy as it seems, or it's not quite what it seems. And she's interrupted by someone going, "I knew there was some beep going on," and we see Maury eating a lollipop. Maury's always seen eating. I love that. It's great. We see him eating a lollipop, and her sister tells, I'm gonna keep calling her sister, I know it's cousin, but we'll call her sister, it's fine. Her sister tells him everything, and she's just like, "I want her to be happy." And Jin's like, "Me too," because Jin is such a caring, compassionate character. I like Jin. I will do the typical rankings at the end of this episode because things have slightly changed now, just a little bit. So they approach the wedding hall, and we see that there are some guards, and they're like, "No one can enter here without an invite." Maury's like, "Oh, I'm just her friend, I need to talk to her." And again, they're like, "No one can enter here without an invite." And Maury starts to walk away, and then he sprints and he attempts to like kick the guys. We get a flashback, and this is the flashback that gives me all the answers I need about Mr. Fish. We see those occult guys from the second episode, and one of them is like, "You must get the sword of God as well as the hand that can wield the power." And we see that the man on the floor who is bowing in front of Mr. Occult guy is Mr. Fish. Mr. Fish is an occult member, and this is why I couldn't work out what his motives were, because we've just been given them. He basically needs Mira and her sword. And that is the only reason why he's chasing after Mira, because essentially he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who'd be generally interested in her anyway. I just don't like this guy. I never liked him from the start, and this is kind of the reasons why. So we cut back to our fight outside with Maury, and he's like, "I can't use my taekwondo on him for some reason." I don't think he mentions why, but he just says he can't. And the guards are about to strike him, and he sees that no blow came. And we look up, and Han has saved him from being hit in the head. We get to see Han in a suit. He looks great. I know, as of last episode, Han was my favourite character. Again, we'll talk about it in a bit, but he looks great in a suit anyway. And okay, so we get this really cool swagger scene where Han and Maury are walking down the aisle, and they're both like adjusting their collar, adjusting their sleeve. Yeah, so Han then says to Mira, "That dress isn't really you." And I'm like, "Ooh, okay, Han." A bit blunt, but okay. I personally thought the dress looked really nice on her, but I get what he means. It's like, he's kind of referring to the fact that you're not really the type to settle down. You're a fighter kind of thing. Mr. Fish is like, "What happened to my guards?" And Jin uses the line that Han used, and he's like, "Oh, nothing. I just gave him a little push." And the blue hair guy calls the guards nothing but little flies, and then he summons a sword and he swings. We get this really nice abstract shot of some blood trickling down the blade. Can't really show it on YouTube. And we find out that Maury again has been saved by Han, and Han's hand is bleeding, so that's where the blood's come from. Jin runs off to go and talk to Mira, and he asks if that the sword style really means so little to her. And this is a really, really emotional scene, and especially with what's coming up. It's one of those, like, it's quite emotional because we get to learn about Mira. He says that a dream is nothing if you can't hold it within your hands. And he tells her, you're doing so well. Like, he's noticed how well she's doing and how far ahead in the tournament she is. And we get this flashback of a guy asking Mira out. And she just rejects him, and she says only a strong man can inherit the sword. Life is kind of passing her by because of her intent to carry out her dad's wish, which later on we kind of see is not really the wish that he had for her. We see her cleaning the dojo, and then we see her slap Mori with her bouquet. We kind of get this kind of flashback cut into the bouquet kind of getting smacked, and it's a nice little transition, which is cool. And we kind of, again, get Jory to saying that you're strong, so the sword style must be strong as well. We can see another flashback with her crying over her dead dad. She goes in for a full-on punch, and her uncle gets involved, and he tells her to stop. He says that your dad wouldn't have wanted this, and her sister's even like, I'll work harder. And Mori, with his grandpa's line, goes, do what you want, Mira. And this is probably where we get the most important flashback for Mira. And it's her dad, and he's doing his gorgeous sword style, and he says, you use your own techniques to make it yours, which is the most key point here, is you make the sword art you kind of thing. And she then says, I'm calling the wedding off. I'll protect the sword style on my own, because she kind of realizes that her dad wouldn't have wanted this. This isn't what he wanted. And we finally get the villain laugh from Mr. Fish, and he speaks in English, so this was a bit weird. He spoke in English, and he says, stop fooling yourself, stupid little girl. I don't know. I hated this guy from the start, so seeing him do this wasn't really a shock to me. He goes into attack again, and this is when we see the same power as before. We see this, I called it people are calling it a stan, so we're going to call it a stan. He summons a stan, and it's a samurai this time. I do like the art styles for these guys, are very cool. These powers, these gods almost. We see this gorgeous samurai ghost, and he cuts Mira's side with a sword, which is almost foreshadowing of what's coming up. Just crying. She attacks him, and she manages to punch him out of her sword style, and then we see the police arrives. Mira tries to thank the guys, but she gets really embarrassed, and she's just kind of screaming at the guys. And then we see that Mr. Fish, who is somehow alive and hasn't been arrested, has stolen her sword. And Maury's like, oh my god, should we go after him, kind of thing. And she's like, no, it's fine, he can have it. Dad's spirit is within me. So this is a very important moment. This is growth. This is character growth. We finally see that she's released something which was holding her down all her life, something that was stopping her experiencing her childhood. And it's a really touching moment. I'm about to ruin it by what's about to happen. Let's all take a breather for a moment, guys. Let's take a breather. Whew, breathing. Okay, we see Han's friend is flatlining. Now, I'm not sure if this means he's died, because we don't really see this. However, with how Han acts, he's either very, very about to die, or he has died. I'm gonna stick to my guns and say that he's not dead just yet. As to what I think this guy is dealing with, I think it's cancer. Just because he's bald, he's probably going through chemotherapy. And as well, because we see that we're in a world where we have these powers to like heal people with nanobots and things. I would probably guess, I know he's probably not rich, and not everyone's got access to this power. I believe that it's got to be something quite serious to have this guy where he is, to the point where he needs people to pay for very expensive medication. And sadly, cancer just is really expensive to deal with if it ever sadly kind of hits your family. We see that Han then flicks to his job. He's working an internet cafe now. So I'm counting that this guy's got like 5 jobs. And those guys are back, and they are tormenting him again, saying, he's on his last legs, blah, blah, blah. And they're being vile. I'm not angry at Han for what he does with these guys. It's the next section I'm not so happy with. And this time, instead of ignoring them like Han did last time, he snaps and he punches them and beats them up, and he's stood there with these fists which are dripping blood. Okay, we've got to talk about it. It's here. The brutal ending to this like really quite nice anime episode we've had. The brutal ending to this anime episode. We're back at the tournament hall and we follow Jin, who has overslept again, as he always does. And he's like, please don't be over, don't be over. Please, I hope that you both win. And he's really kind of excited. And he opens the door and we see Han is beating the living crap out of Mira and she is bleeding. Like, this isn't him. This is even the audience is in shocked. They're like, doesn't this kind of look really bad? Han is kicking her and there's blood going everywhere. It gets so bad that I'm going to call him a ringmaster. I don't think he's a ringmaster, but referee. There we go. The referee literally grabs him and tells him, you've got to stop. And he calls knockout for her. Bear in mind, this is that bad because we've seen so far that you have to declare knockout. The referee doesn't get involved. We saw Kang beating up the Tai Chi guy, who I've completely blanked with his name. We saw him beating the living crud out of him, and the referee doesn't get involved. He was snapping his arms and legs, and he just didn't get involved. It took Mori to jump into the ring to have to like get him to call it. But we see this time that the referee has grabbed Han and he's telling him to stop. You have won. Mira is laying in a puddle of blood, and it then just cuts to this very darkened hallway where Han is walking with a towel on his head, and Mori is kind of there, quite silent with his arms crossed, and he says, I'll see you in the finals. And he doesn't even look him in the eyes, he just walks past. Is almost it. We get, again, if you flip to the end of the credits, we get a little scene where Mira takes a picture of everybody, thanking them for coming to her wedding. And that is it. Okay. And oh my god, just Han, you flipped, you finally snapped. It's really difficult because I can understand where Han is coming from, but I also can't support to the length that he went. He didn't have to get her to a point where she was bleeding in a puddle kind of thing. But then again, he's been under so much stress. So I am not condoning his actions, but I can say I can understand his actions. I understand why it's got to where it is. Like I told you guys before, that Han is secluded. He doesn't talk much, and it doesn't really seem like he's talking to a great deal of people about the situation. If you can imagine being so stressed and worried for so long, and then you've told nobody, and it's got to the point where you're working 5 jobs and the person you're trying to save is dying, like pretty much on their last legs, you eventually are gonna snap. You're gonna be stressed. Those guys deserved their beating, but at the same time I guess he went a bit far, and we can see why he thinks winning this tournament is the only way of saving his friend in his eyes. It's the only way he can get the money to get these really expensive technology to him. I am in a bind, guys. I'm in a bind because Han was my all-time favourite character of this anime so far. He still is a favourite, but at the same time I don't know if I can have him at the top for now. And I imagine that there is going to be an explanation given, or we're going to see Han maybe regret how far he went. I will wait for that. For now, I'm just going to say that Han can tie for his position as my best character with Park for now, just because I like Park's design. I think he's a fascinating character. So that said, I'm going to leave it at that. Han, you've gone way too far, boy. Way too far. It just wasn't... That level wasn't called for. I mean, sure, he has to win no matter what. He's got to save his friend. But it's still Mira. And if you think about it, he initially said that he wasn't going to get involved in Mira's life kind of thing. He says we have no right to butt in. But he does. He appears at the wedding. He saves Mori. And he does butt into her life. So we can infer that he does care for Mira. And he cared enough to show up. But at the same time, he's gone too far. You've gone too far, matey. Gone too far. If anything, if you think about it, Mira's situation, which she was fighting for her dojo, is kind of resolved. She's found within herself that her dad's spirit lives within her. So if anything, her reason to want to win the tournament isn't as strong as Han's kind of reasoning now. And if he had maybe spoken to the guys, maybe she would have concealed the match. I don't know, but at the same time I can see that he probably wouldn't have wanted to have things given to him in such a way. I'm not dropping him completely. I mean, I understand what he's done, but at the same time, I can't condone his actions. That's all I think I've got to say for this episode. I will be back next week on Monday with another episode, God of Highschool. And I will be back on Thursday with the next episode of Koitu Producer, aka Mr. Love. and I will see you then. Bye bye.